Hello and welcome back to the second part of Randomised Gaming video on the PS3's region lock on PS1 games. In case you're wondering why I've split this into two parts, I didn't originally intend to, but unfortunately when I originally captured the video, the second half of the video went a bit awry. There was some slight issues in the sound of the first half as well, where not my audio, it was the actual in-game sound, and I believe it's due to the fact that the Elgato Capture I'm using does not like it whenever you change between resolutions because it cuts off the signal. Well, basically, the PS3 does the resolution change whenever you launch the game disc at a very off way, and that seems to cause the Elgato Capture a lot of problems as it sort of cuts the signal, then changes the resolution. And unfortunately, in the first one, after I inserted the Japanese PS3 game, all the audio went crazy, so I've had to cut it and try again, and hopefully this will work this time because I've had to record this a couple of times. But yes, if there's any Elgato staff members watching this, there's an issue with this. It needs to get sorted, and yes, I am using a HD splitter in order to capture from the PS3, so I'm actually capturing via HDMI, not the audio thing they usually tell you, because that only gives you a component quality picture, whereas this gives you a HDMI quality picture, which is much better. So to prove my point about the whole bizarreness of why PS1 games shouldn't be region locked on PlayStation 3, I'm going to insert a Japanese PlayStation 3 game. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are only two region locked PlayStation 3 games as far as I'm aware currently. One was Persona Arena, which was a 2D fighting game by Arc System Works, and that got Atlas, who did that, got absolutely into a lot of trouble and admitted they shouldn't have done it in the first place. And admittedly, the game did get released in all regions, and it was purely more to stop importers, from what I understand. But basically, they said that was a really bad idea. But the other game is a karaoke game that no one in the West would likely play. But every other game is region 3. Just to show that, I'm going to insert Ketsuyu, forgive my pronunciation, Ketsuyu Extra, which is based on the cave shooter, or is the cave shooter, I should say, to be grammatically correct. So you see this is my European PS3, it's just going to insert, and then you'll see the Japanese logo come up. Because you cannot buy Ketsuyu Extra in Europe. I wish you could, but you can't. So you see there, Ketsuyu, and I'm just going to run it. Okay, so here we are in game, and this is the splash screens. Incidentally, I definitely think it is the Elgato not liking the jumps, because the clock timer on, I just noticed on the Elgato Capture unit, actually pauses when it's doing the jump between the two, between loading the jumping from the XMB, as they give it its official name, the PlayStation 3 XMB, into the game. When you get those those initial splash screens and that black screen, I can see the Elgato Capture timer stop. But as you can see, back on topic, as you can see, Ketsuyu Extra, not released in Europe. There's a teeny bit of Japanese. Actually, most of the game's actually in English. Arcade. No trickery here. I am playing this. And you see, Boots plays. Fine. In fact, this is funny. Most of this game's actually in English, which is quite amusing. You do get Japanese games where a lot, especially the arcade games, where many of the menus are in English. Admittedly, the text-heavy RPGs, sort of text adventure games, will have all the menus in Japanese, but some do have. As you can see, this is a shooter. It was, I believe, Ketsuyu was actually released in Western arcades, but this, you cannot get it on the PS3. It's a great little shooter. I highly recommend it if you don't have a copy. Good fun. You see, it's a perfectly suitable game. You know exactly what to do. Shoot the enemies, dodge bullets. It should have been released in the Western. It's quite an import-friendly title. And it's great that the PlayStation 3 is region 3, so I can play it. So, I'll just finish there now. So I could show you a few other Japanese PS3 games, but I don't need to. That's just the basic synopsis. As you can see, it's region. The console itself is Region 3, and I would like to thank Sony for when they did actually make that decision to make it Region 3. It was really nice, and it doesn't mean you have to import a secondary machine, because as with the early consoles like the Mega Drive, the SNES, etc., you have to either import a foreign machine or you have to modify a European console, assuming you can. You can't always, because certain consoles such as the PS1, you can modify them to play Japanese games, but they don't quite run at the correct speed, because the European PS1 was quite heavily altered to be designed for the PAL system, so it doesn't quite run. There's a few other consoles, but some do run perfectly at 60 Hz, some don't. You need to import the native hardware. In fact, I generally, as much as I have used modding for consoles, I always prefer the native hardware to avoid any faults. So one thing I will say, and I would like to point out while I'm doing this, is PSN Store. In fact, this is another point to actually raise. Since the redesign in 2000, okay, I'm just going to start over the commentary there, just then, because that was actually a change of resolution, which I noticed the capture card is not a big fan of. So, since the redesign in 2010, what's happened is originally, now for a little while, the redesign did feature a page dedicated to the older games consoles. Since then, it's no longer available. It's been removed. There's not a page for actually made it incredibly hard to find and search for the older games, and it's proven to actually be a bit of a nightmare since they made these changes, because some games, so just to show you how bad the search system is these days, and apologies to any of the PSN team watching this video, but this is not a good search system. This redesign was worse in terms of how it functions. Granted, the front page, the splash screen looks very nice. The actual functionality of the shop is really poor, and someone at Sony should have sort of said at the time this is not going to flow well. It doesn't work particularly well, and I suspect it probably has cost sales, because even for someone like myself, I know using it, I find it really cumbersome and unfriendly these days. It's great if you want to find something just released because it's smack bang there in front of you, but if you want to look for something a few months old, and that's one thing. If you want to look for something a few years old, that's really hard to find. So to give you an example, there was Monkey Paws, which are one of the PlayStation developers. They've released a few PSN games. They're the ones who released the Japanese and a lot of the US games. They released Tool Unlimited, they released the Block Kids, they released that Gear C. Now they released a game called Outlaws of the Last Dynasty. Now I'm going to search Outlaws. The only way you can do it, you can't manually type it in, I have to search. So now I know Outlaws of the Last Dynasty was released on PSN in Europe because I did see it for sale. However, when you search it now, there's Outlaws. As you can see, it's not there. Now, it's maybe Monkey Pawn's fault with how they listed it, because I did actually do PSN, or did actually do a few submissions to PSN, I should say, and I know the actual submission system to PlayStation Network and PlayStation Store was not that smooth running, and it was overly complex for how it should have been. I always felt the actual way it was submitted, one of the things you had to do was submit how it was actually planted into the shop, and if anyone makes a mistake during that, Sony might not necessarily notice that mistake, so it will be put into the shop under the categories that the company has given the information to Sony. If they make a mistake and Sony don't pick up that mistake, as in a few cases, the game, I've seen a few add-on packs that aren't listed under the games and just listed under a weird name like Add-on 1 or something. If you don't know that exact name now, you cannot find that item in the store, because you can't just manually search. I can't go to search. I can't search Monkey Paws, I should say, games directly. I can't search developer. You used to be able to in the old system, but since the shop change, searching for the older stuff is very tricky. You can see there. Now, another example is Tool Unlimited, which is another game. Interestingly, I was going to point out earlier, last week they actually had a PSN sale on, so you could easily see the games that were on sale. Now, if you wanted to see, or I should say a few weeks back, getting tongue-tied there, I should say the other day, in fact yesterday, they had a PSN sale that was basically all the retro games. That was good because it actually showed you what all the some of the retro games that were available. That's now gone, so I can't even find any of them, so I have to manually search them. So, for example, if I want to purchase Tool Unlimited, which is a game Monkey Pawn's released, I have to search Tool. Now, this is an unusual game. But unless you know, it's an unusual name, and unless you know exactly what that game is, you're not going to search for it, because the central problem is if I go into the actual digital, you would because searching for these games are now a nightmare. If we go to digital, now you'd expect it to be digital only games. See all. Now, digital only games brings up 107 games. I can tell you off the bat that PSN has something like 500 digital only games in total when you consider things like Castle Crashers and all sorts. None of them are here. You've got, from all the ones you saw earlier on my list, like Fat Princess, Solna X, none of them are here. You've only got a small selection, which doesn't make any sense. And the fact is, this navigation as well is really slow and cumbersome. Now, I know they said there's over 107 games, you're missing loads. So where are they? It's because of this filter, See All Gamers Choice. Now, so the See All does not actually show all, and this is a big problem. So you're left with having to search the subcategories. Let's try All Games. So All Games brings up 1,691 titles to search. This is insane search that only shows 9 a page. I'm not entirely sure how many pages it's going to be before I search everything, but it's going to take me hours to navigate and find anything that I'm looking for. And that's a big problem, because you want something that you can search via alphabet. You know, the old alphabet search system was much better. Now we have this thing where you press A and it searches for everything named A, including all the DLC. At least originally, certainly with Xbox 360, you could search, it had the game named and everything was stuck under the games. And this navigation has made even buying the older games on PSN really problematic, and this needs to be updated as well. I mean, poor Monkey Paws, a lot of their games, literally, unless they're in a sale, you won't know where they are or what they are. And like I said, the 2 games they released, Outlaws of the Last Dynasty and Rapid Angels, that I did see in the European store that I cannot find for the life of me. I mean, to give you an idea, there's not a PS2 page either. I know Suikoden 3 was released, but if you're searching through this is going to take hours to find them. And you really want something, you just want a page that says all PS1 games, all PS2 games, etc. But there's not even that. And Sony needs to update it. There used to be that, but since it's gone, it's just not as good. It's really hard and infuriating to find anything. And it does need to be updated. So I'm going to leave that there. That's the main thing. I mean, overall, I think actually having Region 3 PS3 consoles, as I said earlier, you can actually use it to benefit the PS4, so that you could do this update for the PS3. I mean, okay, the PS3 is approaching Twilight, but you could do this update to benefit the PS3, and even it might prompt Sony to actually think about adding backwards compatibility with the PS4. Certainly the Vita as well will benefit from having Region 3, because I think if people enjoy the games, you know, they might get the disc copy, play it, and say, well, I quite like that, you know what, I might buy it on my PSN so I can play it on my Vita or PSP. And I think having more of them would be great, because at the minute there's such a small, slim selection, and the PS1 has a great back catalogue of games. In fact, many of the certainly the PS1's back catalogue is vastly better than the PS4's back catalogue right now, because the PS4 unfortunately has a very limited catalogue at the minute, and even there are many PS1 games that are better than PS3, PS4 games. I mean, the PS1 had a huge library and some really great classic games. Same with the PS2. It would be really great if a lot of the PS2 games started appearing on PSN. At the minute, I know the PS1 it's much more likely to see the PS1 stuff, but it would be nice to see more PS2 stuff if they did an emulator for, say, the PS4. I just scrolling down there. I mean, we haven't actually passed. To give you a point, I don't know how far in now I am, but we haven't passed a PS1 game yet, so I have no idea where they're going to be, if they're even in this bundle, which is concerning because this is a huge list and you just have to keep searching to find them. So yeah, I think it kind of rests my case, and I'm going to finish there. Hopefully, so what I'm going to say is, if you did like this video, please subscribe, like. But what I really want, you can do that, but what I really want you to do is pass it over, get in touch with Sony, get in touch on social media, pass this video around, get people at Sony to be aware that we want Region 3 on the PS3 for the PS1, because it will benefit gamers. I mean, you have to have legitimately purchased these games in the first place. I think it will benefit. It may well benefit Sony in the long run, because they can see what PS1 games people are playing. I imagine they say, well, this guy's playing a PS1 game. He's playing a Japanese import. He's playing a US import, and it might even prompt companies like SquareSoft to release games like Legend of Mana, like Xenogears that I demoed, that weren't released in Europe, to release them on PSN, because at the minute they aren't releasing these games, and a lot of these games are really, really good. They're still very playable. That's why you have such a big retro fan community now. Although admittedly, when I did contact a few of the retro fan community about this, they were all sort of they didn't really understand quite why you'd want this. But of course, everyone wants this because you want to be able to play the old. I mean, there were a lot of very good Japanese only games that were released in Japan. There were a lot of very good US games, and I think a lot of people know this, and a lot of people want to play them, but so far at the minute the only way to play them is the original hardware. So hopefully we will see a change. And yeah, the retro community, I was disappointed initially with the reaction, so that's why I'm doing this video, to really get people interested and see if people would like to see this happen. I mean, if you want to see this happen, tell you what, like the video. If you don't want to see this happen, dislike the video. But I think more people than not would like to be able to play Japanese and US games on a European PS3. I'm sure US guys would like to play some of the European games that didn't get released over there, and would certainly like to play the Japanese games. And I'm sure the Japanese would like to play some of the US and European games, because there is exclusive games in all regions, although we don't often talk about it. And some people may say, oh, Europe's score is 50 Hz, etc. That's not always the case. Ironically, some European games were optimized on the PS1, and the other case is that there were European-only games that did not get released in Japan, did not get released in the US. So hopefully some of the Sony guys are watching this, and I do urge you, please, please, please get this sorted so we can start seeing more of these classic games released on PSN, and to allow us to play those that we have legitimately, legally purchased the disc version to be played on retail PS3s. And perhaps even think about adding that feature to PS4s. Okay, I'm just going to finish there, but as I scroll down again, I still haven't seen a PS1 game. So, yeah, you want to find a PS1 game on the PSN store. If you don't know its name these days, you are... yeah, yowzers. Okay, that's it. I'm Random Gamer River. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.